Welcome everybody to tonight's coverage of the AL. I am your host, Bo3, and joining me tonight, I'm going to try and point the right way, is Quacks. How are we doing tonight, Quacks?
Really, I'm really excited for this matchup. I definitely think these two teams have a lot to offer in terms of variety and also roster changes. We've had quite a bit of roster changes for both teams, so it's made it very interesting. These are two, well, I guess for PFC, they're more or less a new roster, so I'm very curious to see how those players mesh together, given it's probably their first time playing together. So we might actually see a diamond in the rough here for PFC, and against them is Queen's Gambit, a team that I would argue definitely a middle of the pack. And I think if they win this, they definitely could contend for that playoff spot. Definitely tell themselves and others that they're a middle of the pack type team and that they can contend for playoffs. And I'm really excited to see how this game turns out.
Yeah, for both of these teams, their records are not super impressive. Queen's Gambit sitting on that 2-2 record, and PFC sitting on 1-3. But this is a roster that has been plagued with a lot of potential issues, a lot of roster swap changes, a lot of substitutions throughout their weeks, which has made it, I would say, really difficult for them to have a solid game plan going into each of their weeks. If you don't really know who's going to be playing where and when everybody's going to be available, it's going to be really difficult for you to come into that week with like, oh yeah, I know exactly who my lane partner is going to be. I know how I'm going to play. And especially because both of these rosters have had really difficult strength of schedules, I would say, just looking at their past games. PFC especially, I think, has been playing a couple of the top of the line rosters, people that we're expecting to be like top 4, maybe even top 2 in the tournament as we go on. There's a lot of potential issues for PFC in this matchup. There's, again, like we were talking about, the issues with their roster changing that we've been talking about so much already.
Yep.
Just the fact of like players being shifted around positions, and I think it's going to make it difficult for them to come into this game swinging. It's definitely an underdog story for PFC if they can come out of this game ahead. My personal prediction, not even seeing drafts or not even looking at anything yet, is the 2-0 for Queen's Gambit Knights. Just because they've had, I think, a really difficult strength of roster, so their 2-2 scoreline is a little deceptive. They feel like they're or they look like, at the very least, they're definitely a lot stronger than they actually are.
Yeah, 100%. And so we actually asked you guys at AGL what team you think would win. And a lot of support, basically an overwhelming amount, it was a complete monopoly in support, was to Queen's Gambit. And, we're from NA and we are, used to being underdogs, whether it's domestically or internationally. Maybe you're a TSM fan, you're usually let down. We go to World, I'll usually let down collectively. So today, I figured it would be a really good time to root for those underdogs. And I went out and it drove 20 minutes and got some PF Chang's. I have it right here. It's a nice little thing of Mongolian beef, and it's got some spinach in it and some rice. Now, every time PF Chang's, or PFC, as we'll be calling them, every time they get a kill, objective, or win, I will be taking a bite of this food right here. Yes, I'm doing like kind of a mukbang stream at the same time as casting, but I'm willing to take a challenge. So I'm rooting for PFC here, and I'm hoping they win.
We're going to have to see how they perform in their game and how much of your meal you're actually allowed to eat. We're really expecting like pretty heavy favoritism towards Queen's Gambit Knights in this particular matchup. They've had their more solidified roster. They've, again, had the much more difficult, I would say, strength of schedule. They played against a lot more of the top teams. They do have their substitute top laner this time as to Gara, as opposed to Unicorn, who's usually up there at the top side. So we'll have to see how Gara can slot into this team and try and make everything work for them. But I think Queen's Gambit is sort of the team to beat in this particular matchup.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this new PFC roster fares against a team that definitely wants to prove themselves to the top dogs of the AGL. So I'm predicting I'm rooting for PFC, and I'm hoping for a 2-1 PFC. I think realistically, PFC don't have a way to 2-0 Queen's Gambit. I think that Queen's Gambit have shown enough of themselves that we can kind of put them in a position where they probably won't lose it. They probably won't get 2-0'd unless it's like a very big off day for them, which some teams do have. But I also think it is worth noting that PFC look really good on paper. You have players like Shift, who is relatively fresh to ADC, but he has a very nice win rate on Jhin if you take a look at it. He has a good Caitlyn he's been playing, as well as, more stable players like Espada, who has been a complete rock in the top lane. He's definitely one of their best players. He has a lot of carry top laners. He can play things like Fiora, like the Jax, and I'm definitely looking forward to a more topside favored game, as I feel like both of these teams put heavy emphasis on their top laners, with junglers sort of going in to support them with early game picks like the Volley Bear or like the Ivern, like we saw for Scrams, which I'm really excited to see. I'm really actually hoping to see an Ivern because it's a super rare pick in a gold league of all places.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about PFC, but I do want to shift our focus a little over to Queen's Gambit Knights because I think, like we sort of been offhandedly mentioning, they are what looks to be a pretty impressive team. They do have the potential to explode into these top spots, maybe challenging for a fourth, challenging for a third, trying to get up there and really get into the sides and be a thorn in the side of those top dogs. I think especially like you were talking about Scrams, and I think Smitty as well, their support have a really wide and diverse champion pool and have a lot of ability to play different styles of drafts to a similar amount of comfort that they would on a champion that they know more like colloquially, something that we do more in like solo queue. But I think the real thing for Queen's Gambit, in my eyes at least, is trying to unlock Death Lotus on the map. Get him moving on these mobile assassins, these squishy mages, try and get him on like a comfortable pick like Ari. Give him something where he's going to be able to, once he gets a lead in that mid lane, through either support roam or through jungle interference, get him moving on the map, get him like a double kill on the bot lane, get him moving towards top side, plates, tower gold, whatever you can to just unlock him and get him moving.
Yup. As we continue to talk about the game, we will now hop into draft here with PFC versus Queen's Gambit Knights going into game one, as we have a few misbans as both teams, or no, actually not both teams, I take that back. PFC had a bit of a mix-up with their roster, so they will, I believe, be getting 2 ban losses, or no, just 1 ban loss, as we see the bans flying out here. Silas, followed by Alawi, right? We talked about this just now, right? PFC want to target that top laner. They want to target that top side. It's a very top side focused game. And right off the bat, we see comfort picks being taken away left and right. We have the Annie, we have the Aurelion Sol, followed by the Annie. These are 2 champions that I think are incredibly important in the meta right now. Annie is a really good flex pick into mid and support. And Aurelion Sol, he was just played in LCS yesterday a bunch, and really it showed the power of what this Space Dragon is capable of.
Yeah, ever since his rework, he's been a little bit of a terror in solo queue, and I think is going to be a champion to watch out for as he is now eligible in Aegis. So we're going to have to see how each of these teams are going to pick him up. Queen's Gambit is actually going to be the one to take away the gangplank, make sure that's out of the hands of Espada. This is something that he loves to play in solo queue. Not too shocking to see it taken away from him. And PSC is going to lock into Sejuani first, actually.
Yup, Sejuani is an incredibly versatile pick in this meta right now. You can play her jungle and top, and she's just as useful in both roles. She has incredible synergy with Radiant Virtue at the current moment, right? The healing that it can provide for the team as she goes in, as she engages. Just the overall value of Sejuani is something that cannot be understated. And that pick is immediately followed up by a Taric pick for Queen's Gambit Knights here. Taric is definitely one of the less popular supports, especially in the meta right now. So what do you think about this, Brittany?
Yeah, as a support player, this is kind of surprising. I can't remember the last time I've seen a Taric in any of my solo queue games outside of like some very strange funneling strats. Taric is a champion that really thrives when the meta is engaged and you have players trying to attack the bottom lane player champions who want to move forward. I think champions like Sejuani, things like Cassante, even a Garen that we saw earlier today in the Evil Geniuses versus FlyQuest matchup. Champions who really like their main prerogative is, hey, I'm going to walk forward and hit you. Taric does really well into, so it's surprising to see it locked in this early into the draft, and I already really like PFC's counter to this with the Jinx and Renata. Jinx is a champion that I think is really, really strong in the meta right now. I think she's being underutilized, and especially with an enabler like Renata behind her, it's really easy for Jinx to turn into a kind of lane bully and make it really difficult for Taric to play out his laning phase the way that he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Finishing out our first phase of draft, we have the Swain pick. Again, a decent flex pick. You can pick Swain in the top lane. You can pick Swain in the top lane, but usually, most likely, that Swain will go mid, as we know it won't go support because of the Taric lock-in. unless they do some funky Taric jungle things, but I highly doubt it. As we go into this, as we go into the second phase of bans, we have a Jax followed by an Urgot targeting those top laners once again, making sure that both of them are off comfort picks. And we have a Fiora hover into a Fiora ban followed by Queen's Gambit Knights finishing out their ban phase. And I wonder how PFC are going to respond. Maybe with another top lane ban. Maybe we'll see a jungle ban. There has been absolutely no focus on jungle for either of these teams. And we do. We see the Kindred ban. Kindred is definitely one of those junglers. You cannot underestimate Kindred, because if you do, it'll probably spell death. And with a comp like this around a Kindred, it's pretty terrifying to see.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a perfect scenario where your Kindred is potentially caught out, has to use her ulti, but Taric comes out of nowhere with the Cosmic Radiance, timing it perfectly with the end of Kindred ulti, so as soon as she comes out of that invulnerability, she's invulnerable for another 2.5 seconds and just starts running you over. That's a brawl.
We might see a Taric jungle. I might have called it.
Hang on. So if it ends up being something like Taric top or Taric jungle, which I guess is where we would now expect that to be. I'm trying to understand where Queen's Gambit is trying to go with this draft. They have a lot of support for this Twitch and for this swing if they want to play around it. But PFC continuing their own draft plan, I think, is like as good as they can do it. They've got another beefy frontliner, and there's a real lack of tank shred for Queen's Gambit right now. That Cho'Gath going to be such a nuisance for Twitch and Swain to work their way through. And with a Syndra as well to apply that single target burst that this comp seems to be doing so well on, I think PFC have actually rounded themselves out a pretty decent draft, all things considered.
Yeah, definitely. They have 2 tanks in the front line, followed by a Syndra and the Jinx in the back line, just hitting you for free, throwing their balls, throwing their rockets, throwing anything they can at you. And then the Renata is obviously there with that ult, with that bailout and things like that to help out the team. And we have the final pick going into an Olaf. Now, Olaf is one of those champions he can go jungle or top lane. So we could see either a top lane or a jungle Taric. My guess is we'll probably see a Taric jungle and an Olaf top lane. I'm really curious how this is going to go, because I believe Taric was, he gained a little bit of traction a couple of years ago, because I believe there is actually a challenger Taric jungle main in NA named Light Rocket who kind of knows what he's doing on that pick. He kind of pioneers that pick and shows what it can do. And definitely curious to see how this is going to play out for Queen's Gambit Knights, and definitely how PFC are going to respond to such an unorthodox pick.
Yeah, I don't think this is the draft that in what prep we were able to do for this cast. I don't think this is anything like what we were expecting for Queen's Gambit. If I just look at my notes real quick, I was expecting like, okay, give Death Lotus something mode, unlock him on the map. Gara is like their sub, but he plays a lot of fighters, so like you can put him on a tank, you can put him on a fighter, something more comfortable in that top side. Yeah. If they are going to give him the Olaf, that's to be expected. And Scrams, we were talking about it a bit. He can play the utility junglers. He did pick out the Ivern earlier this year. So what are they going to do with this Taric? If that is going to be the jungle pick, and that is what they end up locking in.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious
how practiced is Scrams on the jungle Taric? How well does he know like the clear, the ganking potential? Because I'm gonna be honest, I know nothing about Taric jungle, so I couldn't tell you a damned thing about what he's gonna do.
Couple of notes on Taric jungle, because I actually have, as a jungle main, I have play tested this pick a couple of times before. I've played it a couple of times in normal games, mostly when I was just kind of trolling around with friends, but never seriously. So from what I can gather of it, Taric, a few things about him is Taric is very mana heavy on his clear. He needs to start blue buff or he will run out of mana and he'll have an incredibly weak clear. You start your Q and you just continue to whack them with your empowered Qs and your auto attack enhancers with that Q. And essentially the idea is that you want to bind it onto your hyper carry. You want to bind onto your hyper carry and simply play around the lane that is winning. So I could definitely see Scrams going a lot around Death Lotus, like we talked about in draft, playing around that mid, playing around that top, right? We could definitely see a more topside focused Tarek. And so I think that is going to be interesting given that Lotus are actually, I mean, not Lotus, Queen's Gambit are on red side. So that red buff is on the top side instead of that blue buff. So it would make it more difficult in the early game to play around his top side. But I think the Tarek jungle is actually an interestingly smart move here with how much hyper carry potential the rest of his team has.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of potential for this. I think we're not going to be seeing like the level 2 E-Flash Tarek jungle gank. But if he can start that blue buff on the red side and start pathing up towards the top lane, maybe get that level 3, maybe even level 4 gank if he does somehow full clears on Tarek. Just unlock the Olaf a little bit. He's into a tank matchup, so Olaf is going to be fairly comfortable in this early game. I don't think he's really going to be struggling to play the lane against Shogath, and this is something I want to mention really quick, because something that we've noticed about Espada is he loves carry top laners. This is a comfortable style for him where he's playing a bruiser, he's playing a fighter, Gangplank especially, one of his big picks, stuff like Yone as well, things where he's able to potentially be an in-game like kind of solo carry, take a lot of resources, play the game out to his style. But now that he's on the Cho'Gath, he's sort of put himself into a, I wouldn't say a counterable position, but in a sort of like, you're on a leash with your AD carry position where you're like, okay, Jinx, you're gonna walk me over this way. I'm gonna stand in front of you while you do all the damage. I'm just gonna look really big and really scary. But it's not like he's gonna be one-shotting Twitch outside of a couple of scenarios. He's not going to be like going on the back line, deleting multiple members. He's playing the tank.
Yeah, percent. And so as we close out our discussion about draft and we wait for the game to load, we will be seeing if PFC can pull themselves together and see if this new roster has some light in it, see if we might have found a diamond in the rough in AGL, while seeing if Queen's Gambit Knights can pull off that win, proving that they are a contender for playoffs. And even with those weird drafts, they can still do it. So we will see you guys in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Walking on them. One moment to escape. Walking on the moon. Never been. All our trouble seems to fade away. This is how I feel when you take me to some levels that I've never been.
Welcome back, everybody. We are starting with a very interesting draft in our game one of the AGL tonight of Queen's Gambit Knights versus PFC. We've got PFC on the blue side with what I would call a very standard draft, as opposed to Queen's Gambit on the other side, who have decided we're gonna toss a bunch of supports together and see if it works.
Yeah, 100%. We can see both teams, level 1, are grouping together in the bot lane. This is definitely a thing that a lot of teams, even in pro, have been doing, just going bot lane, getting that vision. It's a very bot lane-centric meta right now, so making sure that that bot lane is secure is definitely your team's #1 priority, as we do actually see Queen's Gambit wrapping around. They might meet PFC here, but they are spotted on the ward.
Yeah, they're fully on vision here. A really nice ward in the Krug pit. Make sure that PFC is going to have full information. We might have
my God.
It's the standoff. Spinny's going to lead the way. We're fully prepared. The chokeout is a 3-man knockup. They're looking for the fights. It's just autos. Brahma's going to be so effective in these early fights. But Gara is super low. He's going to get taken down. First blood goes to Jinx. Now Spada is sure to fall second. He's going to have the health potion ticking. He might be able to survive. Spuddy's going to pick up a kill on Scrams. And suddenly it's an all-out brawl. Shit that's going to flash and cleanse away. A nice handshake again to fight a 3-man stun. Spinny is so low. Spada can't find the knockup onto him. And now Spuddy, maybe the one in trouble. Atlas has that lethal triple stacked up. A nice flash over the grass from Swain. The potion is ticking, which means the poison will not kill. And it's 2 early kills for PFC, and one of those, all importantly, going to the Jinx. I feel like I've seen this one before.
Yup, every single invade with a Jinx. Anytime you're against it, if she gets a single assist, a single kill, a single whatever, it usually goes wrong. With that passive in mind, you cannot underestimate Jinx's level 1 as she picks up a kill and a long sword coming back to base here. Now, they might miss the first wave as we do see a little bit of trading in the top lane here. Gara going a little bit aggressive. As Olaf, this is definitely something you want to do. You're a lane bully through and through. When the game breaks open, you're literally your only purpose as Olaf late game is to get into their backline with that Ragnarok. But early game, you can have your fun. You can poke them out, you can bully them, you can harass them with those Qs, with those Es, and if they try to trade with you, you can pretty much just kill them.
Yeah, you're feeling pretty comfortable in this Olaf versus tank matchup, or at the very least you should be, and I think Gara will be happy to just take these early trades. We already see him whacking away on Espada's health bar, but Espada is also playing the Cho'Gath, so he's got the health potions, the regen passive, so he'll probably be fine. I think we're expecting to see a lot of trading, but not a lot of kills up in this top side. Now, really quickly, I want to talk about the jungle pathing, as Scrams has gone for that full bottom side clear on that blue side. He didn't have any potions or any sort of fighting. There's now a bit of fighting in the mid lane as Death Lotus does have the flash and the ghost. They're not going to pop it. I'm popping a little bit too late, actually. Chunk missing that Q. Death Lotus will be able to survive. A bit of a messy exchange in the mid lane. It's going to end up just being the summoner forced away. And Scrams also ghosted to make sure he got there on time.
Yeah. Scrams with the ghost usage early on cannot be good at all. I think the ghost is definitely something you want to keep on a champion that's impoverished in jungle like the Taric. You really value those summoner spells when you're playing more off-meta champions, not just in jungle, but in any regard ever. As we do see a little bit of mid lane action going the way of PFC, as we do see Death Lotus's flash burn. One thing I do want to highlight is the late game for both of these teams. Both of these teams have merit in their late game team fighting. We have things like the Swain, who, if he gets ahead, is basically just a wall of China that the enemy team can't get through. He's draining everybody and never ever losing any health. On the other side, on PFC side, we have things like the Jinx, who 2 items, once they get that Infinity Edge second item, can really spell doom, especially if they're ahead, which they are because they have that 1 kill.
Yep, we do finally see Scrams finishing up that full clear, managing to farm actually about as fast, if not a little bit faster than Shawarma. Nice trade in the mid lane for Chunks, getting a little bit of health off of Death Lotus, but Scrams is here. Doesn't have a flash to try and make an engage happen, so this will just be Taric walking forward if he does opt to go for this game.
Roaming.
Yeah, we do have the roam from the bottom lane. Atlas is here, invised up. Death Lotus is going to get latched onto, and there's 4 people in this mid lane. Aggressive onto the Syndra. They won't find anything other than just a bit of extra damage, but this is the pressure we were expecting out of Queen's Gambit, just playing for this mid lane, making sure that Death Lotus is able to play his game.
Yeah, 100%, and it's definitely something that is specific to that Twitch. Twitch excels at these insane roams that no other ADC can take. Things with that stealth he can take those types of trades, even though he is missing this wave. We didn't have time to talk about it in the pregame, but I think Atlas is definitely one of the unsung heroes of Queen's Gambit. Smitty roams a lot. He has a lot of roaming champions that he has to play in order to satisfy his top side with that mid lane, with that top lane being so carry oriented, that Atlas plays things like the Xayah and even like the Seraphine, where he just is sort of on an island. But here we see Atlas actually helping his team out with that Twitch, with that Invis, trying to make sure that his team can get ahead while he plays weak side. Because chances are, that's probably what the name of the game is going to be this series, as we do see a gank coming.
Atlas, the Inviso Twitch lining up the stun perfectly. Shift gets a great cleanse out. They won't be able to find the Brimstone just yet. Finally grab it under tower, but Renata does also have that bailout on Jinx, so there's no chance of a kill. That is a summoner spell burned away, a very important one. Chunk is going to hit 6 in this mid lane. I doubt we're going to see any sort of a kill threat go over, as Death Lotus is just about full HP. But yeah, that's the power of Twitch plus Taric in these bottom lane ganks. You have this stun coming out of stealth out of nowhere. It's really difficult to play around it without a cleanse if you don't know where it's coming from.
Also huge for Queen's Gambit, because look at the CS in bot lane already. We are nearly up 20 CS as the Twitch. Granted, there is a pretty big wave going into shift here, so that should even it out somewhat, but having an already pretty decent CS lead definitely evens out the gold lead that the Jinx got on early when she got the kill. And I definitely think that's really important when looking at this bot lane, because both of these champions are heavy scalar type champions.
Yeah, we do see Atlas again, just making the movements up towards mid lane, really trying to protect his mid laner. And this is the thing with Twitch. This is why Twitch support has been a thing for as long as it has been, and why it also works well on Twitch AD carry. While with ADC, you are going to be giving up a little bit of resources, some CS and XP in that bottom side. Twitch is really good at roaming. That invisibility lasts for so long, and that increased movement speed, it lets him ambush out of stealth and really get some aggressive trades off. As we see, speaking of aggressive trades, Gar is going to go in on the top side with the Ragnarok pop. The Spada does not have the damage. Gara just runs him down.
Where is the counterplay to that Ragnarok spell? I do not know a single top laner who looks at Olaf at the current moment and says, yeah, I think that's okay. So many people have been preaching and crying for Olaf to get nerfed simply because the Ragnarok ability is one of the best ultimates in the game when it comes to dueling and creating pressure. Even in team fights, an Olaf with Ragnarok is absolutely terrifying, and I guarantee later on in the game we'll be seeing almost everyone from PFC just going after that Olaf if he tries to get into that backline. As we do see Gara hiding in the bush.
Yeah, he does. He's a little bit behind in health and mana, but he is a little bit up in XP despite the CS deficit. Espada does not have the ultimate for himself, but with the silence and the knockup, he should be okay now that Gara does not have access to that Ragnarok. It is just going to be him making sure that the teleport is used as much as possible, force the wave back into him so Gara can get a safe recall. I think that's okay. And I'll tell you the counterplay to Ragnarok that nobody ever talks about. Stand really far away from Olaf. Oh, good knockup. Espada is going to cancel the recall. Gara's getting really low. He doesn't have access to the feast just yet. Gara's looking for the autos, but is not able to find a nice undertows. But he is now out of mana, so it's going to be really hard for him to continue this trade. Espada maybe looking for some kind of lethal here. That feast is not on cooldown for too much longer, as we got now a 3v3 on the bottom side. Very early anti-heal from Spudnik as Shawarma, as the Glacial Prison is looking for the potential. Atlas coming out of stealth, getting aggressive, but it is just going to be the trade of CC. No kills given over, just posturing.
Yeah, and both of these junglers now have their ult locked as
hang on. As Death Lotus is looking to get in on the mid lane, has the Ghost, and the Demonic Ascension pop gets that slowdown. The Conqueror stacked. Chunk has nowhere to go. Flash, not enough. Death Lotus picks up the solo.
Nicely played by Death Lotus, but wait.
Looking for something in the bottom lane, but Atlas again has that stealth. How are you going to find the Twitch when he is invisible? They're going to look for some kind of aggression here onto Shawarma. Hill has the Glacial Prison, but here's the ultimate wombo combo. The Glacial Fissure plus the Cosmic Radiance. It's so much tankiness for Queen's Gambit. They're going to get aggressive onto Shawarma, finally pick up the kill. Atlas is going to flash forward for it, and the stuns chain together to keep Sputnik down. It's a double kill for the rat in the bot side.
Shawarma playing too much with fire in that fight. He overstayed his welcome in bot lane for way too long there, just kind of trying to zone off the Twitch. but he did not have any idea that scrims might still be in the area. And what becomes just a little bit of reconnaissance on the side.
Shit.
Oh,
No, that poison doesn't tick. He's fine. The poison
AP
doesn't.
Twitch is
Wait,
not in
tick,
this game.
tick.
Oh!
14 HP. I saw that number go down too. If that was the magic rat, that might have been a little bit more dangerous. But Atlas is still going to delay that recall by a really long time. So this is just going to exacerbate the CS lead that he has in this bottom side.
Yeah, 100%. And we can definitely see the gold graph swinging much more in favor to Atlas now as he does swing that CS lead over to him. Getting those 2 kills certainly helps, but being 20 CS up, even though the Jinx got that first kill, it's almost delete now. It almost doesn't matter as Atlas is just kind of running a train over this bot lane, showing Shift that he is the boss of bot lane and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, this is what a really good AD carry and support duo can do. This is, I think, the difference in the amount of scrim and practice time between these two teams. Atlas and Smitty, not only, like, big props to Queen's Gambit, I wanted to mention this earlier, but just all of them having that QG in their name, you love to see that dedication to the team and to the org. So you already know they're, like, scrimming on the weekly, they're playing together regularly. We already see Atlas has that full Blade of the Rune King in inventory. Death Lotus as well has that full Mythic completed. These are really fast item buys, as Death Lotus is going to look for the flash where they don't find it on the choke with a stun from Tarek, lined up by Atlas beautifully. The Unleashed Power is going to go down to the Death Lotus. He will fall to the tower, but donating the kill over to his AD carry. It's a nice one for one in the mid lane.
I think what sucks about that is I feel like Death Lotus definitely could have lived that. I feel like he didn't need to take that last tower shot in order for that kill onto Chunk to come through and make it a 1-for-0. Definitely an unfortunate turn of events for Queen's Gambit over here as Death Lotus does die, but I don't really think it matters that much because I think the mid lane wave is pushing in to Death Lotus anyway, so he will be able to pick up that CS and that stacked wave.
Yeah, I do think I also want to mention while we've got a bit of room to breathe here, it is a big teleport advantage as the game is going to go on to PFC. Queen's Gambit have opted for Ghost in both of their solo lanes to try and make the aggressive plays happen, and we've seen it work out already. 2 solo kills for both Gara and Death Lotus in their lanes, just using those ghosts and getting right on top of their lane opponents. It's really difficult to play around that, but without the teleport in the mid and late game, we're going to have to see how PFC can take advantage of that summoner spell difference.
Yeah, 100%, and I am definitely excited to see how, as we get a bit of trading here, Spot is really tanky already. He only has a Giant Spell and a Kendall Gem, and he already feels incredibly tanky. That's definitely the power of Cho'Gath here. Later on in the game, this Cho'Gath is going to probably, unless Queen's Gambit are just that far ahead, I can totally see a Spot as Cho'Gath being a problem with just how big and how tanky he will be. He'll probably be building that Heartsteel as well, so getting through him is going to be a challenge despite the fact that they do have that Tarek ultimate in inventory.
Oh, Espada can sniff the trouble. He knows that Gara has made this play once before. He doesn't want to step all the way up to this wave without seeing where this Olaf is. We do also have Scrams close by. He's popped the Ghost. He's looking to get in. The flash away from Espada is really nice, and the right arc is popped as well, which means that suddenly burning both Ghosts. That's a really nice play for Espada in the top side.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's what Espada said this time, as we do see a little bit of trading. Espada's trying to freeze this wave, but he's losing a lot of health for it. He's trying to make sure that that wave doesn't crash under the tower, but yeah, I mean, he is taking a lot of trades, and he's lucky he's Cho'Gath, or else I feel like he probably would have died a lot by now, as we could see a potential tower dive here. Scrams is clearing the wave, and he has full HP, but Espada's looking to trade. He does have the
I don't think this is the trade you want. Tarek is surprisingly good in the 1-versus-1, but Shawarma is up here now. He's looking to protect. He's top laner, but it's not enough. Scrums is going to get that last hit. Now with the Cosmic Radiance, Shawarma and Chunk are not going to be able to do any damage. It finally drops off, and now Death Lotus is here with the Ghost and with the Demonic Ascension, and suddenly the jungle is left to die. It's a double kill for Scrams on the Tarek jungle. He's popping off.
Tarek has surprisingly good dueling power with that Q constantly healing him up and giving him that double auto attack enhancement that he has with the attack speed. People think they can kill the Tarek, but he actually does a lot more damage than you would think, and he has a lot of survivability, having that shield, having that heal. He even has the invulnerability if you get even close, and it's only going to get worse as we do see that shield built onto Scram. So I'm thinking we might see a Radiant Virtue coming on for Scrams here, as I think that would be a really wise choice and a really good item buy on the side of Queen's Gambit, as we see some trading in the
aggression in the bottom side. Atlas didn't pop the spray and pray. I think there was the potential for a lethal there if he had gone for it, but we do see in the mid lane, they're going to burn that teleport and the Rift Herald to try and get Chunk some more gold value, and I stun onto Death Lotus. They won't find anything off. They're just trying to get this Rift Herald into the tower. Gonna get pulled and rooted up. Death Lotus getting a nice healthy trade back, and Gara has rotated down actually to help deal with this Rift Herald just to make sure that it doesn't take away the full tower. And now Scrams here doesn't find the stun onto Shawarma or to Chunk. They will just walk away, but that is the Chemtech Dragon up and available, and with all of the mid lane present in the prio, this should just be a free dragon for Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, 100%. Queen's Gambit taking objectives and rotating beautifully around them, as we see the Jinx Rocket. It does not connect and it does not hit. We are not yet at the patch where the Jinx Rocket will be doing 1200 damage again, competing with the Smite.
Yeah, I do think it's gonna be quite a long time until we see a Jinx Rocket or a Varus Q steal an objective, with the buff to jungler smites being close to 1200 being at 1200 once the smite pet upgrade, once they've evolved their Pokemon fully, it's complete. Shift is just going to be tanking the tower to make sure that he can get this first tower, and I think that's genuinely worth it.
Oh wait, they got an objective. I have to take a bite.
Yeah, Scrams is here. They are looking for a nice heal on to Shift to get away. Scrams is looking for the aggression. Atlas does still have that spray and pray, but it's going to get brought down by the hostile takeover. Nice defensive use of the ultimate, and they get first tower just for a trade of a couple summoner spells. I think that's okay.
Yeah, sorry, the food made me lose my train of thought. This Mongolian beef is too good. PFC is definitely trying to look for intros back into the game, and that tower is definitely a good start, as we do see Chunk. He took another objective. I have to take another bite.
Yep, Scrams and Death Lotus are going to look to take revenge for their fallen tower. The Unleashed Tower does not have the execute yet. It has not enough damage. Death Lotus is going to get his third kill of the game.
Wow, that's some good Mongolian beef. Death Lotus is slowly but surely getting fed on this Swain, and we talked about it in the game. If Swain gets ahead against this team, there's basically nobody that can kill him. You're going to have someone who can take care of his a massive amount of healing. And we all know that Swain is incredibly tanky for the fact that he literally only builds AP items. Swain builds a little bit of tankiness, but for the most part, he's almost all damage. And yet, I would say he's one of the hardest mid laners in the entire game to kill.
Yeah, his tankiness does really come from the Zhonya's, plus that passive, plus all of the health that the AP items will give. As we got a bit of a fight breaking out over the second Rift Herald, the teleport in from Espada. Shawarma's coming in, he's looking for the skill, he's gonna find it! Gets the smite down, but now Espada is trying to get onto the backline as well as Gara. He's gonna pick up Shift through the bailout. It's a double kill for the Olaf. The Ragnarok still going strong. He's throwing the autos out. Shawarma picked up the Rift Herald Eye, so he is going to have that one for himself, but I don't think he's going to survive for much longer. They're going to donate the kill over to Death Lotus. And it's a lot of kills for Queen's Gambit, but importantly, they do not get the Rift Herald, so they cannot continue their tower pushing.
Is definitely something. I feel like that is probably putting a band-aid on a bullet wound at the current moment for Queen's Gambit, as they are kind of losing in every sense of the word. In every sense of the game, they are behind. So getting that Herald definitely could provide a way back into the game. But with just how behind they are, I'm not sure where they're thinking of putting it. As we see Gara trying to take that tower, he might kill Espada.
Espada doesn't have the feast just yet. He's waiting for a nice shield from Gara. Has to flash away from the undertow. Gara doesn't have Ghost, so he's not going to be able to continue the chase. That is a very free flash burn for Gara, being pretty happy with that one, as Espada really has only lunched on those minions so far. He does have the Heartsteel, so he's going to be stacking up a lot of HP, but we can already see that Atlas is built around it. He's got that Blade of the Ruin King first item, so he's going to be playing, essentially, kill the frontliner. We know what Cho'Gath likes to build. He loves his HP. He loves just stacking up that health as high as it can go. And Sejuani as well recently, with the Radiant Virtue plus Warmogs being her usual meta build. Atlas knows he's going to be playing into some healthy frontliners. So what do you do against healthy frontliners? You build the percent health damage.
Yeah, 100%. I just noticed that Swain has, I believe it says 39 soul fragments on the Swain. Yep,
Yeah,
39. Definitely 468 bonus health for that Swain. It definitely is going to start stacking into being noticeable just how much HP is getting from that passive. And I definitely think that, I don't know who's going to do it, but someone from PFC needs to build that healing reduction. Healing reduction is kind of a niche thing right now, as not a lot of the items that involve it are good, but we see
aggressive onto a Spada. Looking for a bit of extra damage, a nice handshake from Sputnik, but I don't think this is the fight he wants to take. He's actually going to use that heal just for a little bit of extra move speed, as we do have a pause come through. It looks like the support for Queen's Gambit has done a bit of a disconnect, so he's going to be hopefully reconnecting soon. It wouldn't be a League of Legends game if there weren't some kind of technical issues, so I'm not too surprised to see the pause come out. Just looking at the state of the game right now, the start of the game looked really good for PFC, but after just a little bit of trading and a little bit of early kills given over, the objectives going towards Queen's Gambit, they've cleaned up that first, 2 minutes really nicely.
100%, and I definitely think it's from lack of action coming in from PFC. They had a lot to play around with that Jinx getting ahead. If they managed to get that Jinx if they already had that Jinx further ahead with that one longsword, if they managed to propel that lead, we could definitely see a different story in this game with PFC being more ahead. But it's kind of sucks because Shawarma decided to path top instead of bot, which when you have a Cho'Gath as your top laner, I don't really see the value in trying to play around that. But here we are, and I guess that's kind of the punish that happens when you try to play for tanks in the top lane. And even if that was the case, there's not a lot you can do against Olaf. Usually in my experience as a jungler, when you try to gank an Olaf top, especially as a tank jungler with a tank top laner, you'll probably get double killed.
Yeah, Olaf is one of those champions that really can thrive in those 1v1s, those 2v2s, even sometimes the 2v1s, just kind of similar to Alawi, where it's like, hey, if you want to come and fight me and give me more value on my passive, on my lifesteal, I'm totally okay with it. But yeah, the game state is pretty comfortable for Queen's Gambit right now. The Ocean Dragon spawning in just about 20 seconds. They've got a little bit of extra time, as we are going to get unpaused, so we will be jumping back into game as soon as the second spectator delay stops itself. It is a Riot game, so it is going to take us a couple seconds to get back into game, but be fully aware the game is now unpaused and the players are now playing. Interesting, I want to note, we're talking about the anti-heal. Sputnik right now is, as well as Espada, are the only ones with anti-heal, and just to be frank, support anti-heal items right now, terrible. They feel so bad to build because the Riot, in their changing around of the anti-heal systems again, decided to remove the ability for the support anti-heal items to spread to teammates with shielding, with healing. So now it is just if the support does magic damage, they will apply anti-heal, which feels really bad. And suddenly you are now fully relying on your teammates. Speaking of relying on teammates, it's the Ragnarok popped from the Olaf in the top side. Gar is going to get eaten up and deleted before the Cosmic Radiance comes down. The hostile taker is going to find 4, but Atlas is shooting into an invulnerable teammate. Shift is going to pick up a kill. Suddenly the fight is looking a lot better for PFC. Shift is going to pick up a nice never move from Death Lotus. He finds a double kill for himself, and Atlas in the meantime free firing away on the back line. Shawarma is going to go down. It's a triple kill for Death Lotus. It looked shaky for a second there, but Queen's Gambit come out on top.
But you were talking about Brady getting Death Lotus ahead in that early game, making sure that he has the ability to scale up and fight in those crucial fights, like this one that just happened right now. Insane payoff for all of those roams from Atlas, from Smitty, all of that camping from Scrand, really paying off as the Swain is now 7-1-5, probably sitting on a ton of gold with an already really good Leandries. Yeah, we see he's sitting at 2,000 gold. He's going to recall and get so much gold and so many items, and it's just going to get worse on the side of PFC. It didn't matter the fact that they killed Gara almost instantly with that feast, because this Swain is just an absolute raid boss right now.
Yeah, this is a very, very tanky Swain. 47 stacks on that passive. He will not have the Rhyalize. He's got that anti-heal in his inventory as well, just to make sure that the Radiant Virtue has as little value as possible. so far, again, like, 75% KP, this is an unlocked Swain. This is feeling very good. Espada will now finally have that 7th stack as they're going to look to get aggressive on Gara. Shift is up here, but the Rider Arc is available again. Shift, I don't know if this is where you want to be standing. He's going to flash over the wall. He's going to burn the cleanse as well. I think that may have just been a bit of muscle memory as all 5 members are up in the top side for PFC. They will pick up Gara. The Baron is technically available to them. It is warning. PFC, they're going to start it up. The pink ward is now in the pit. There is no more vision for Queen's Gambit. They're going to have to explore this blind. Atlas going into the stealth, being a little sneaky. Death Lotus has the ghost, and the demonic ascension, and he's never moved. He roots up 3. He's looking to get aggressive. He pops the to go dominating over the Jinx. The bailout is going to be procced on the support, but it is just nothing doing. Death Lotus picks himself up a double kill. Atlas, in the meantime, is shredding through these tanks on the top side, and it is just nothing doing for PFC. They look for the Baron, they're instantly punished.
That is going to be a free Baron on the side of Queen's Gambit. As we see Atlas actually looking for more on his spot, and he does have that feast.
Yeah, that's Heartsteel plus feast. He's
oh my god!
Espada says no! Atlas goes down. Big shutdown gold over to Espada.
Espada with a bit of an ego check onto Atlas, saying, I don't know about that one, Chief, as Atlas just goes down instantly. He got basically half health from that feast right there, really showing the power of what this Cho'Gath can do, as he now has 247 stacks on that Dark Seal. And the Baron finally picked up for Queen's Gambit here. And while we have a little bit of leeway, there isn't going to be a dragon for another 2.5 minutes. I want to talk about Scrams. He has 17 out of 19 KP on Taric jungle with a Radiant Virtue and building probably, he has an impoverished pick with an impoverished room set, with an impoverished like item set as a support. It's actually incredible how well Scrams is playing around his team this game, and it's something we highlighted before the game starts, how well he's able to play around his team, how well he's able to play weak side the jungler, picking those more supportive junglers. And I definitely think he is a player to look out for all junglers, and you can definitely learn something from Scrams and the way he plays, and the way he plays weak side, and definitely his champ pool. Hey, if you want to pick up the Taric jungle, Karia did some crazy stuff. Now Scrams is doing some crazy stuff. Maybe the off-meta things are calling our name.
Yeah, I will say, like, Scrams, I think must have, like, leaked my notes earlier from today, because I was looking through his OBGG, his champ, I'm like, oh wow, he plays, like, a lot of, like, kind of off-meta junglers. He's got, like, the Ivern that we were talking about earlier. He's got a lot of utility. He seems to like to play for his mid lane, and he said, oh yeah, you want to see playing for mid lane? You want to see playing for my laners? I will play Taric, and I will be a pure support. Who needs to do damage when I can just keep them alive forever? Like you said, 17 out of 19 KP is already insane. A nice 3-man stun from Chunk, but there's just no engage. A Shift's actually getting pretty aggressive with the fully stacked lethal tempo. This Jinx does have a lot of range, so if there is ever a misposition from Queen's Gambit, there is a possibility for a punish. But how do you punish Taric plus Swain? There's so much healing. The spot is out of mana here on the bottom side as he's trying to just wave clear against Gara.
Yep, and we can see that Death Lotus are pushing, I mean, not Death Lotus, Queen's Gambit. I keep getting the two confused. Queen's Gambit are pushing to try and take those objectives. Queen's Gambit have actually really good siege with things like the Taric, who's able to just use his 2 auto attacks with his Q, and things like the Swain, who, if you walk up too far, he can just pop E on you, and you'll probably die with the amount of CC that Queen's Gambit have in their arsenal here. As we have a dragon, this will be Soul for Death Lotus. This will be Ocean Soul, which is frankly probably going to be GG as soon as it's taken, because I mean, look at how much healing they already have. Olaf W, Eric as a champion, right?
Oh, Shawarma's gonna face check into the death rush of Queen's Gambit. He will get stunned up. Scrams is looking for a little bit extra follow-up, but they don't want to chase the Sejuani too far. Nice peel away from PFC. But yeah, like you were talking about, Ocean Soul, with all of like the mana hunger that everybody, I would say, on Queen's Gambit is going to be suffering from, as we just see a quick little check-in on all of the anti-heal items. feeling fairly confident that Queen's Gambit is getting a good amount of value out of there, since we've got the Soul Fight. Shawarma's gonna have to try and get in. He's in there. The Dragon's gonna go down 4K. It's dipping down. Cosmic Radiance, they're looking for the Smite Fight. It's down to 2K, 1K. Chunka's gonna pick it up. A spot is gonna grab it, deny the soul away. But the fight is all in favor of the Queen's Gambit. Atlas is just free firing on these autos. There's no one to threaten the Twitch. Death Lotus still full HP on the front line. Goes legendary, killing the jungler of PFC. And that's 2 quick kills picked up in retaliation for that Dragon Steal. And there's a possibility that the game's just over here.
Yeah, they could definitely look to end. We see the wave coming in through mid lane as it passes the halfway point of the map. We see that Queen, they're definitely looking to posture to end this game. We could definitely see it happen, as well as Midi combined with Scrams could totally take a front line here and try to just tank whatever kind of damage PFC have in store for this team. I guarantee you Scrams can come.
3-man stun from Chunk. They've got 5 seconds on the respawn of this Sejuani. Gar's looking to get aggressive onto Chunk, try and keep them away. The first Nexus tower is falling. The second one is falling soon. Shawarma has respawned. Espada is now back. The Nexus is now open.
They're trying to end.
Oh, stun from Chunk is going to deny the end. Scrams is still trying to get in the left. Come through. Scrams on the Tarek is going to pick up 50 gold for himself at the end of that. 21-10. Queen's Gambit are going to find the victory in game 1.
Convincing win coming out from Queen's Gambit. A very interesting draft and a very interesting play style presented by that team, but they made it work, and they made it work incredibly convincingly as well. I'm really impressed with just how well Queen's Gambit played around their mid lane. We talked about it before, how much work Death Lotus can put in when he's ahead, and we were proven right this game. Death Lotus, 10, 1, and 6, almost 12k gold earned from this Swain. 23k damage in a 28-minute game for this Swain. Definitely showing us that he is the carry of this game. Death Lotus, do not underestimate this man, as his whole team plays around him for a reason.
Yeah, and speaking of playing around your team, I have to give, if we were going to have an MVP vote, it's got to be Scrams on that Tarek. The early game looked a little shaky. It was a little bit rough on some of the early ganks, but once you got to that level 6 mark and you got that mid game, it felt like his whole team was unkillable. I think one of the only, big kills that happened was Espada just, one-shotting Atlas when he was on his own, or getting through Gara's health bar with that feast. Otherwise, it just felt like, how are you dealing damage into this Queen's Gambit lineup? And this is something that now PFC is going to have to be wary of as we move into game 2 if they don't want to just take a quick 2-0 loss.
Yup, and real quick, producer, can we see the healing done by Scrams in the stats page? I just want to kind of check to see how much he healed.
Yeah, Scrams did a
31,000.
31,000 healing. For context, the next highest healing done was Sejuani with 12,800. Yeah, Tarek does a lot of healing. It should be well known, but this is just Scrams putting on a clinic of how to do, of all things, Tarek jungle. We are going to go to short break before we hop into game 2. We'll see if PFC can bounce back and try and even up this series, or if Queen's Gambit is going to lock it away in a quick 2-0 fashion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Push it away in dance chase and whispers before they all just fade. So how can I leave it all behind when I refuse to watch it fall to dust? Find a way. This boy every time I close my eyes, a little less of you remains. I know you're slipping further from me now. Am I too far away?
Like a bomb squad.
Welcome back, everybody, to the AGL Week 5 series between PFC versus Queen's Gambit Knights. Into Game 2 we go, and draft has already begun as we see a Silas followed up by an Olaf ban on the side of PFC, making sure that Gara can't get that top laner again.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about this in between games. Well, as PFC, what can you do to negate what Queen's Gambit did in that game? We were thinking about the potential ban changes. We were like, okay, if they do ban away the Taric, what are they going to take away, or what are they going to leave up? They're instead opting to just fully ban away the main pieces of that composition, take away the Olaf for Gara in that top side, and take away the Taric, importantly, for Scrams in that jungle. Just making sure that whatever style of composition that is, it's going to be missing its main piece.
I'm going to be honest with everyone watching at the current moment. I thought there was absolutely no way they would ban the Taric, but here I am. I was wrong as they follow up the last ban with a Gangplank as we do go into the first phase of draft. I definitely expect to see a Swain picked up for the side of PFC, taking it away from Death Lotus. We talked about this off of stream, but we definitely agreed that Swain was the main reason Queen's Gambit took such a convincing win over PFC in the last game. Swain just becoming an absolute raid boss, even when PFC managed to get a couple of quick picks onto the team in team fights in certain times. That Swain was just always there, leeching off of health and making sure that you could not kill him, as we have an Annie picked up. And we also talked about this. So what do you think about this Annie pick, Brittany?
Annie's a really good flexible pick. You have that mobility between mid and support just being really strong overall right now. The AoE stun, the insta drop bear. There's a lot that Annie can do, and especially with the buffs to her shield, she's really good at making sure her team can stay alive. So if Queen's Gambit, we're going to be playing around mid again, throwing that Annie to support and giving Death Lotus some kind of carry, maybe even this Tristana, which is also kind of flexible. There's a lot of potential for this Annie. I do want to say I do like that PFC have picked up that Swain in that first rotation, essentially just using that first pick as their third ban, saying, hey, we're down a ban right now. There's not a lot that we can do about that just because of like the ESUB situation. It's not entirely their fault. There's not a lot that they can do about it, but they do have this blue side. They have first pick, so they're going to take the Swain away, opt in for it themselves. It does leave them more open to counter pick, but it does mean that it doesn't go into the hands of Death Lotus again, as we do see the Volibear picked up for them to pair up with that Swain, assuming it does go to the jungle.
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely think it will go to the side of jungle, as Volibear is one of Shawarma's most picked champions. He plays a lot of early game focused junglers. We saw him last game. He picked the Sejuani, and I definitely think Volibear is more of a comfort pick here, as we see the Caitlyn again picked up for PFC, or not again, but we see the Caitlyn picked up for PFC. And I think that this is definitely something that we have to keep an eye on. Caitlyn is one of the best ADCs in the game right now, and it looks like Shift has some experience on that pick. So it's no surprise to see him on that champion, as we see an Alawi finishing out the first phase of picks. This is definitely a champion that Gara is known for. If you look at his OP.GG, you can see things like the Alawi being picked, like the Urgot being picked. He has a lot more unorthodox bruiser style type champions. And I definitely think that it's going to be interesting to see how PFC respond here.
Yeah, these are the two bans from the first game that we saw, the Annie and the Alawi. This was what PFC thought was going to be the primary drafting style for Queen's Gambit, and now that they are using those two bans to take away what worked for them in the last game, suddenly now Annie and Alawi, comfort picks for Queen's Gambit, available for them. And now Queen's Gambit, having that basically blind pick on the top side, they're going to use these next two bans to protect the top lane as much as possible. I think try and force Espada onto a tank again. Take away the fighters, take away the bruisers, take away the things that Alawi doesn't really match that well into, and give her a lane where she can just keep punching the tank as much as possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your point there. I would say Espada was definitely the one part of PFC that was a thorn in Queen's Gambit's side, as that Feast actually put in a lot of work. He was definitely one of the harder champions to kill, and we could see a return to Cho'Gath this game from Espada if everything pans out, as Cho'Gath is incredibly good at securing objectives. We saw Dragonsteel later on in the game, even though they lost that team fight, that Feast can do a lot of damage later on in the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for this next draft. We do see the Kindred and the Diana taken away by PFC, trying to protect their jungle pool a little bit. Diana and Kindred, I would say especially, really good at getting aggressive into the enemy jungle, as we see the Seraphine lock in for Queen's Gambit here. So they are going to be waiting for last pick on this jungle, unless we see something insane like an Annie jungle. I'm not going to, call anything out. I'm not going to say like it's impossible. But I would be surprised.
Yeah, and I definitely think with that Seraphine lock-in, it is almost certainly a Tristana mid. Atlas is really well known for the Seraphine. He's picked it in the past. And I definitely think that it is worth noting that Death Lotus is experienced on AD mids. We've seen him in solo queue play things like the Pantheon. And I think AD mids are something that a lot of mid laners in AGL lack the ability to play. Or not necessarily lack, but they don't play them as much, as we see things like the Victor right now, or we see things like the Silas, more mage gear type mid laners put in the mid lane in this league. And so AD mids are definitely more of a niche that I think goes into Queen's Gambit favor, as I think Tristana is one of the best mid laners, especially against the more weak early game mids like the Victor.
Yeah, and speaking of weak early games, that is a Kale insta-locked into the Alawi matchup in that top side. As someone who used to play Alawi a lot and used to be a top lane player, I don't think this matchup has changed in a very long time. Kale is going to suffer pre-level 6, but then post-level 6, once she has access to that range, it's going to be really difficult for Alawi to actually play the laning phase in the way that she wants to. As Queen's Gambit is going to lock that Wukong in for the jungle themselves, really strong jungler on the patch right now, really easy to, I would say, execute on. Having those two cyclones really makes it difficult for a lot of these shorter range or lower mobility characters to play team fights. Especially people like Victor, like Caitlyn, who really only have that one escape for themselves. It's
Mhm.
I do like PFC's draft. It is very standard. We do see the Swain moved over to that support as the Victor was locked in. So it is going to be a very long range bottom lane for the Seraphine Annie that we're expecting to be on the bottom side if that Tristana does go mid. So if PFC is going to play through the bottom lane, there's potential, but we've seen what Queen's Gambit can do when they play through that top side and when they play through that mid.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that Scrams is, again, definitely playing toward his strengths. Scrams excels, again, he excels at these more weak side oriented junglers, but Wukong has been one of his most played champions in the past few weeks. He's played it a lot along with things like the Amumu, these types of champions that have a really good amount of agency when team fights occur. I think that this is definitely a really good matchup for Scrams, as Wukong is actually really good into Volibear, being able to chunk out his armor with that Q. And we could definitely see, especially with his mid laner being an AD mid, we could definitely see a Black Cleaver rush coming out from Scrams, even though I do think we could also see that Mythic rush coming in for Wukong as well. I think the Black Cleaver rush is just as likely if Scrams wanted to do that.
Honestly, as long as we don't see Hempunk Chainsword first item, I'm totally happy that that item's time as its first item rush pick has come and gone. Junglers around the world, let it go.
Yeah.
Hempunk Chainsword, it's got a nice build path, but you know what also has a nice build path? Black Cleaver. That item, insane right now. It's actually genuinely probably one of the best items for AD junglers, bruiser junglers to first rush. I would say even probably like some of the fighter and maybe even marksman junglers if you really wanted to go for it, something like a Kindred. But yeah, let the Kenpunk Chainsword die. Let it gather dust in the corner. It's had its time in the spotlight. Build your Black Cleavers. Be happy with the position you're in. Just let the anti-heal go.
And I definitely think that it's important to note that this Annie pick definitely, we talked about this last game as well, but a lot of focus is toward this mid lane. But if you look at this mid lane matchup, Victor versus Tristana, you will almost certainly, or at least 90% of the time, I would expect Tristana to have this Victor pushed in. So there is definitely a decent amount of chance that we could see Annie and Wukong converging in the mid lane to maybe dive. We could definitely see some dives going on, as Tristana is one of the better dive champions with that E and just being able to get out with that rocket jump, with that reset on the kill. So
yeah, I want to point out really quickly as we're looking at the in-client draft right now, you guys on the stream can't see it, but that Seraphine is locked in to mid lane. So it is going to be the Tristana plus the Annie in the bottom lane, which to me at least says that Queen's Gambit will be playing more towards their AD carry this time, playing towards Atlas, and maybe letting Deathlotus kind of just sit back and play the support.
I was wrong. I fully admit that on stream. My bad. As we do see the Swain support coming in again as well. This wasn't something we talked about when it happened, but the Swain being support definitely provides a decent amount of setup for things like the Volibear, who definitely lacks setup. Sure, he has that Q that speeds up, but it doesn't really become a useful amount of CC until he literally is in the face of the target with that stun. So I think that the Swains never move and the slows coming from his W, and eventually maybe even the ult drain will come in handy if they want to play around this bot lane, which I can definitely see them doing with such weak early game solo laners like the Kale and like the Victor. I can see this game swinging a lot more into the bot lane this game rather than the mid lane.
Yep, and just as we start talking about that Tristana being in the bottom side, Gambit decides to play with our hearts a little bit, trade the Seraphine back over to the bottom lane. So it is the Tristana mid we were talking about. Queen's Gambit, I just want you to know, I don't take it personally, but I do hate you, and I hope you feel bad. Tristana mid, something that we've seen a lot in professional play right now, a really strong pick. Like you were talking about earlier, into these weaker early game mid laners, people like Victor, someone who can't trade as much early without like that first Hex Tech evolution. Tristana can really take advantage of that with her explosive charge plus demolish to really take away a lot of plates, her wave clear being really good. There's a lot of potential for action in this mid lane. And speaking of action, we're going to be taking a short break before we step into the action. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Yep.
Welcome back, everybody. After what was a much less exciting draft this time around, we are back for PFC. versus Queen's Gambit Knights. After a bit of a draft switch around, it is going to be the Tristana in the mid lane and the Seraphine in that bottom side. And while both of these teams set up what looks to be a very standard 5-point defense, we're not going to have any level 1 5v5s this time around. But I do want to point out that Death Lotus has that Halo Blades on the Tristana, and Atlas in the mid lane, on the Seraphine, has the teleport as opposed to something like the heal.
Yeah, 100%. And I can definitely see Death Lotus. Look at his runes. Look at his summoner spells. This guy is going in for the kill. Ignite, Hail of Blades. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very early flash taken out from Chunk here. Or, for lack of a better word, he gets quite literally chunked out of his health later early on in this game.
Yeah, I do think the Halo Blaze is a pretty interesting choice. Very often we're seeing Tristanas go for something like the press the attack to scale a bit more into the mid and late game. But yeah, the Halo Blaze is going to give her access to more of the damage in the early game, just getting those 3 quick autos off with your explosive charge, trying to get as much damage as possible. As we do have a slight DC, I'm assuming that we're going to have a pause. No, the reconnect is fast enough, so there won't be any sort of a delay, but it does mean Shawarma's going to be ever so slightly delayed on his jungle clear, as Gar is just going to try and defend his tentacles up here on the top side. And both junglers are starting on the bottom side, but importantly, Shawarma is starting without a gank.
Yeah, 100%. And I definitely think Shawarma would have benefited from starting Raptors on this clear. Usually when you go leashless, and especially with champions like Volibear who have that AoE, they have that AoE Thunder's Cloud, they can totally start Raptors and easily make themselves into a more accessible type of pathing, as we do see some trading. We talked about this early on. Death Lotus hits that level 2 immediately going in, hitting that Hail of Blades proc. But I think that Shawarma needed to start Raptors there because we put a lot of emphasis on PFC's need to play for bot lane here. And we can see bot lane is pushed in here. If Shawarma went bot lane, took his Raptors into red, into Krugs, he would be bot lane at level 3 right now, and with their lane probably hitting 2 off of this wave, we could easily see a flash burn on the bot lane, immediately putting Queen's Gambit behind.
Yeah, but instead we are going to see the having towards the top side. We were talking about this a little bit between the break that we had, just the fact that we potentially will see Shawarma play for this top side, try and get Kale activated as early as possible, get her to that safe level 6 point. But we do have an invade, actually, as Scrams, a lot of damage was being put into the Warrior Trickster clone, which means Scrams is going to be much healthier coming into this buff. I don't think he's going to go for the steal, as there is the priority in mid. Well, he's thinking about it still. He's still hanging around in the area. There's the potential.
He can do this. I mean, Chunk has to sack a lot of minions if he wants to come help Shawarma here. Shawarma can't really do anything, though, because Scrams actually had a really, really intelligent cut-off. He goes 3 camps directly into that gank. He knows he can't gank the bot lane because it would require him to wrap all the way back around. He knows he can't gank the mid. He doesn't have any, leeway to do that. He would have to tower dive, which he can't do. So he goes instead for the very smart invade here, as we now have Death Lotus. We have the Paste coming up here to try and take this, as Scrams, it's also worth noting, Scrams doesn't have flash. He opted to take the Ghost onto the Wukong this game and playing more toward those team fights to try and accelerate with his ultimate there instead of for those early game kills. And we could definitely see the disadvantage of going Ghost there, as he might have actually been able to apply a little bit more pressure, maybe even burn a flash from Shawarma, which would have been huge in the early game for that Volibear, as it's really his only way to surprise his allies, as we see some trading in the top lane.
They can kill. The allowing soul passive can potentially kill them, but he's not going to find enough damage. The spot of living with a literal sliver of HP, having to flash away from the tentacle slam there. Huge amounts of damage coming out from Gara. This is how you have to play the Kale versus Alawi matchup in the early game, because once Kale gets 6, this lane is going to be so difficult for you to play through, as we're seeing a little bit more pressure on the bottom side, as the rest of PFC is going to make sure that Shawarma can comfortably get the Scuttle Crab and make sure he doesn't get double scuttled, as well as having that blue buff stolen.
Yeah, 100%. As a jungler, I can totally attest to having that scenario that Shawarma was in where he got his blue buff taken. That hit me right in my soul. There is absolutely nothing you can do there, especially on a champion like Volibear, where you can get that blue buff without fighting. And with no prio in either of those side lanes, it's just completely doomed. So I'm really happy to see that PFC said, okay, we can help you get this crab, and they help him get the crab, try to get him back a little bit of tempo from the game, from this port that he lost when he got his blue stolen and when he got that crab taken.
Yeah, I do also want to say something that we haven't really mentioned. We have a Volibear with 2 losing solo lanes, at least in the early game, until Kale gets that level 6 mark. It is really difficult for her to play this lane phase out. She just now dings 5, so she is pretty far behind in XP. And Volibear is an early game jungler. He loves taking these early ganks off, wants to be playing aggressive, getting up in the face of these laners. But Shawarma has just been set so far behind, and candidly, if we're just going to be fully honest, you were talking about it earlier in the free game. Volibear, you said, I think, was one of the worst junglers on the patch right now, if not one of the worst. So, it's not seeing Shawarma play aggressive in the early game and not seeing him take advantage of what little power this champion does have, it's going to be really difficult for him to start playing in the mid and late game once these laners have items and once they can start breaking through the fragile health bar that Volibear has.
Yeah, definitely, and I feel like what Volibear opts to accomplish, which is a lot of early game, pressure, as you said, can be better accomplished with picks like the Jarvan. Hell, even with the Elise, despite the fact that she just received nerfs this last patch, Elise, Rek'Sai, these are all champions that I feel, despite the fact that they don't provide nearly as much frontline, maybe Jarvan does. He definitely does. Despite all of that, I feel like what you want to accomplish this game is better accomplished with basically every other early game jungler in this game.
Alright, he's gonna get his soul pulled, that test of spirit on the top side, as Gar's just gonna give him a little bit of a smack around before he ends up going away. Scrams is actually a little bit behind in XP, as Shawarma does have that level 5. But yeah, Gara and Espada now being level 6 in the top side. If Shawarma comes up to gank, it's better for Gara, but if it's just a 1v1, it's actually better for Espada, weirdly enough in this situation.
And Shawarma is posturing to try and gank Gara here. Espada does have R, so it is worth mentioning that they could maybe kill Gara. He does have flash, and we can definitely see Gara playing up, not knowing that Shawarma is here. Misses the test of spirit.
Spirit is really important. He's gonna get stunned up, gonna finally pop the leap of faith and get a little bit aggressive, but Espada has the damage. No! He's gonna be able to walk away. Now Scrams is up here to look for the counter game, but he's not level 6 yet, so he doesn't really have access to the power point of that Cyclone. As we get an aggression in the bottom side, Smitty's gonna take a little bit of damage, but he's also playing Annie, so he's gonna be just fine. The cleanse burned away from Shift. Very important cooldown, especially as Smitty and Atlas are getting close to that level 6 mark.
Yeah, 100%. And Brittany, can you explain to me why Volibear just ran away after Alawi Ard? Because I feel like if he flashed and autoed him once,
we're gonna have to wait. Deathload is looking for the lethal chunk. He's forced to flash away. The Ignite is burned. Deathload is still looking for these last autos. The Buster Shot! First blood, Death Lotus.
Exactly what we talked about. That early game Tristana damage, you cannot underestimate it. That Ignite, that Hail of Blades, and now with that ultimate just does so much damage, puts so much pressure on the Victor, and it's going to be a really long time before I feel like Chunk can actually do that same level of damage back to Death Lotus. Despite him being an ADC, it takes quite a bit, it feels like, for Victor, especially if he's set far behind, to become the Victor we all know in that solo queue, just shooting lasers that do half our HP, with Qs that make him go a million miles an hour, and of course we cannot forget the Chaos Storms that just feel absolutely terrible to step into.
Yeah, it is really Victor being locked behind the Hextech evolution and getting that Hex core upgraded, but until he gets to that point, he is a fairly weak mid laner. We were talking about this when we were talking about Volibear. Victor is one of these early game mid laners, or these late game mid laners, who doesn't really have an impactful early game. It's going to be a struggle for him to get to the first Hextech upgrade, as I believe it's 50 CES per each one. I don't remember the exact numbers behind it. He should be pretty close to his first one. Yeah, each minion grants 1, and then the cannons grant a little bit extra. Champion takedowns even more, but as he has 0, it is just going to be a little bit more time until he gets even that first one. And while that will help him with wave clear, it's not really going to be the most help in these 1v1 trades.
Yeah, and while we were discussing it, we had Scrams and Death Lotus. Hang on, I can't talk.
The explosive charge, they're going to find the stun. Chunk is going to get that last knockup. Chunk is going to get knocked up one last time. The explosive charge will find its mark. They will find the kill in the mid lane again. This is now a 2-0 Tristana. Suddenly, that mid lane tower is looking like it's potentially in a lot of trouble, as they do also have the Rift Herald on Scrams.
This is literally what I was going to talk about before the fight happened. Tristana has amazing siege power with the and combined with the early Rift Herald, that's so much gold put into the Tristana's pocket. Yeah, we can already see 4,000 gold for Tristana, most in this game by quite a decent margin here. As we see some engagement on the bot lane.
Encore finds it's Mark. Beautiful amounts of damage coming through. Smitty's gonna find the last hit in that bottom side, and that shift without cleanse. We talked about it earlier, that all-important cooldown, and now with the level 6, Smitty and Atlas can just run shift over.
Yeah, and that prediction from Atlas, I'm not sure if it would have flashed, but I believe Atlas actually did predict the flash coming in from shift with that encore. Definitely something I would have to replay, but unfortunately we're not the LCS, we don't have access to replays, but I think that was really good on Atlas. They played that incredibly well, layering their ultimates, layering their
mana. You can't fight this. The test of faith and the test of spirit and the leap of faith are going to come through on a spot, and these are the fast tentacles. No, the fast tentacles run out actually on that leap of faith, so Spada will be able to dodge these out with those tier 2. Totally fine. But this is Gara actually playing this matchup, what I would say is really, really well, because this should be the point in the game where Spada can start to get ahead and start bully out this Alawi.
Yeah, I am the PFC solo laners right now. I am living in Spain without the S. They are completely getting ran over by the solo laners of Death Lotus, and some really good ganks from Scrams here, as we do see Shawarma trying to posture for that bot lane. Maybe they try to take the dragon. They do have priority on the bot lane, but we can see Scrams. He has his mythic complete. He's running down. If they choose to fight this, chances are Queen's Gambit just run them over, even with the ultimates for the side of PFC. I can't see them winning this fight, but it doesn't look like it's going to go to a fight, as they do take the Cloud Dragon here. That's a first dragon coming up for PFC.
Yep, Spudnik looking for the flashing engage, a nice sidestep by Smitty, and the bear drops onto 2, a huge amount of damage, and the stun coming through. Shawarma already down to half HP. Shift now in trouble as Scrams. He's on that back line. The Stormbreaker is popped just to get away. A huge root from Atlas is going to find 2. Keep Shawarma down. Sputnik maybe the next to fall, but he's going to be able to get under tower just fine. Atlas hitting these roots like no tomorrow. Beautiful accuracy on this Seraphine, and it's a quick kill. Give it over to Queen's Gambit.
Atlas has been really impressive on this Seraphine these past couple of weeks. It's definitely one of his pocket picks. He plays things like the Xayah, but he also is known for Seraphine. Seraphine is probably one of the best ADCs right now. If you actually look at U.GG, she has one of the highest win rates for ADCs in the game, as we see as we see Queen's Gambit diving.
Spudnik. Oh, Spudnik, buddy. F7, F's in the chat, 07s, whatever you want to do. Spudnik is dead and gone. Death Lotus is going to pick up the last hit going on a killing spree, as it's going to be more plates over to Queen's Gambit, as they've got about 30 seconds before this plates fall. They're going to try and get that last one, but they just won't have the damage for it. But that's still, like we were talking about, so much gold on this Tristana, so much gold on this
6,000
as well. Already 1,000 gold up in that bottom lane too, and near about 1.5, closing in on 2,000 gold lead in that mid lane. That is just a ridiculous amount of gold for this early in the game.
And I also think it's worth noting, look at Scrams' gold lead. He has nearly 1,000 gold on Shawarma here, and he has only gotten 2 assists, and he's up 1 CS. That definitely displays the power.
Rocket jump, die. That is the Ignite. Death Lotus is going to go on a rampage. Pick himself up his 4th kill of the game.
And this is so tilting to play against if you're
Gara
PFC.
does the leap of faith. Espada is going to pop the ulti on himself, but doesn't have the flash to follow on Gara's flash. He does have a lethal tempo stack. He's going to look for, but will not be able to find it. And just very, very nice edge trades on these top sizes. Gara, I think, might even be going for the
might be looking for it.
First item. Oh, Scrams has got the blast cone.
They're in the area. The rest of, yeah, he probably isn't caught out here, but yeah.
Yeah, he's got the blast gun. He's going to be able to walk out. Chunk's just going to grab a small first strike proc off of him, get a little bit of gold, and he will finally have that mythic in his inventory. Chunk having the Andrews is probably genuinely very necessary, as he'll probably have to build anti-heal as well if you're looking at the amount of healing that's going to come through for the Alawi, for the Seraphine, even for the Wukong. With that passive, there's a lot of excess healing and a large amount of shielding that comes through for this Queen's Gambit roster. So it's really difficult if you're going to be taking a straight up 5v5 without that anti-heal to try and get a kill through the Seraphine shielding, the Seraphine healing. How do you break through it?
Yeah, 100%. And we can see Queen's Gambit, their bot lane is now completely unlocked from the map. We can see them going mid lane here, trying to support the carries, trying to support Gara, Scrams, and Death Lotus, who are all, on all accounts, very far ahead of this game, especially Death Lotus. 4-0 on that Tristana, already has that Mythic. Going into that BT, we could definitely see an Infinity Edge. We'll see an Infinity Edge going in second item. And as we know, ever since the crit changes, Infinity Edge has been one of the best items to build second on ADC. Getting that 40% crit chance with that new passive is absolutely humongous. And with the amount of damage that Tristana is doing and dishing out in this game, I can see this Tristana just basically being unkillable with the amount of peel he has. He has things like the Tibbers, he has things like the Encore, and basically Seraphine full pit. And he also has things with that Wukong, as we see a little bit of trading in the bot lane, trying to poke out Gara.
Yeah, Gara has the leap of faith, so I think he's genuinely, with the Hullbreaker in inventory, actually pretty comfortable in even a 1 versus 3 situation, as the rest of Queen's Gambit is going to start pushing in mid. And we haven't talked about it as much. It is really the sort of like the underlying story of this mid lane being so far ahead. The amount of turret pushing that Queen's Gambit has access to, even just with Seraphine and Wukong, it's so much damage. With this Rift Herald, they're just going to take this inner mid tower as Death Lotus is going to look to get aggressive up to jump this.
He's doing it!
He will flash away with the Chaos Storm. The Leader's procs, Death Lotus is going to take, but with the health potions, he will be able to survive with a sliver of HP, just barely making it out.
That was almost 700 gold into the pocket of Chunk. Death Lotus is actually staying around looking for this kill. He does probably have that rocket grab.
Yeah, he's got Buster Shot available in inventory if he wants to use it, but he is just going to grab the wave instead. I like the fact that he's looking for it, though. This is the kind of confidence you want to see when you give your mid laner these resources, when you give them all this time and all this pressure and all this money. This is what you want to be seeing out of your star carry player.
Yeah, 100%. We can see that Gara is just zoning off the entirety of PFC with that Test of Spirit and just making sure, saying, you will not get into this pit. You shall not. This Gara on this Alawi definitely gatekeeping PFC from attempting to even move through past their tier 2 turrets, as we are how many minutes into this game and we already see them at the base in this mid lane. Queen's Gambit just frankly are busting this game open with this Tristana and with their excellent use of Herald. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a 20-minute Baron in this game.
Yeah, they have really managed to unlock the map, even as we're like just getting past that 18-minute mark, moving towards that 20 minutes. This is a really massive lead, and I think it's funny that Gara was really that gatekeeper in that potential dragon fight, just not even allowing it to happen. While he's the person with the second least gold on Queen's Gambit, aside from obviously Annie in that support, being even with their laner, having practically the least amount of money on their team, given that the items that they're going to have to buy, Gara is still such a menace on this Alawi just because of that Hullbreaker. When they're separated from their team, it's so difficult to actually knock them down and push them fully out of the fight.
Yeah, and I want to take a minute to kind of back away from the praise we've been giving Queen's Gambit for the past basically 18 and a half minutes. Yeah. But I want to take a look and see PFC. PFC, even though they are losing pretty badly in this game, you look at their comp and you see they have a lot of scaling potential. This Kayle is slowly but surely making her way up to that level 16. And even when Kayle is behind, and really, I would say she's probably the only member on this team that isn't, she has a lot of potential to just melt the carries, which are mostly squishy on the side of Queen's Gambit. So I feel like if the game persists for much longer, and PFC managed to find a good fight, maybe they managed to find a 2-for-0, maybe they even managed to find a pick onto this Victor or onto this Kayle, we could definitely see a more even game coming in, and it would definitely delay the game to the point where we could see a late game that could, for all purposes, be very PFC favored.
Yeah, this is a... There's a lot happening in this game that I want to talk about, as we're just going to have to take a Quick second on it as Scrams is getting aggressive onto Shawarma with the team behind him. The bear is dropped. Stormbreaker's over the wall though. Shawarma's actually going to be able to survive.
That was Flash and R.
Yeah, that's a lot of defensive tools burned out of Shawarma, and we're talking about the potential for a 20-minute Baron. This is definitely it. And while Queen's Gambit takes out this Baron, I do just want to look at the itemization choices for PFC really quickly. We were talking about the potential for them being a scaling advantage and having the scaling. I think they've taken that a little bit too far with the Heartsteel on the Volley Bear and the Rod of Ages on the support Swain. Normally, Rod of Ages on Swain is something that's like fairly normal to see. You might even want to see something like a Leandries if you're going to have him in the mid lane and gaining resources. But when you're the support, it's such an expensive item to buy, and it doesn't do a lot for your teammates. It is a really selfish purchase. So, I mean, if Sputnik can start, like, picking up kills, picking up gold, and start getting to be a beefy frontliner, maybe there's something happening there, but I don't know. It just feels like the kind of... It feels very weird to say, but like the Hopium pickup, where it's like, okay, if I get this extra level up, if I get this extra XP, I can start evening out the deficit that we're in this game. If we can get to that 35, 40-minute mark, get to our scaling point, start playing where our champions are stronger, we'll be able to make something happen in this game. But it's a very hard-pressed thing to say that PFC is going to make it to that point in this game.
Yeah, 100%. I am just trying to give them a little bit of hopium here, as, I mean, I did buy their products. I drove 20 minutes for it, so I want to give a little bit of credit to them and be like, hey, maybe they can win. But another very questionable choice, at least in my opinion, is the Merc Treads on the Volley Bear. When you look at the carries onto Queen's Gambit, there's one name that sticks in your mind, and that's the Tristana. And Tristana's AD, so I'm not exactly confident in the ability to build Mercury Treads here. Maybe he's doing it for the tenacity as well as the bot lane, but the bot lane isn't really the damage dealers here, and I don't think the tenacity is what's going to lose you the game as Volley Bear. You already have that unstoppable ultimate. You already have the ability to last a while in teamfights with that W. You have the shields. You have the heals. So I don't really find it worthwhile to build Merc Treads in this game.
Yeah, he really is just fully worried about the tenacity coming out from Smitty and Atlas. And to his credit, it is a lot of CC. The Encore and Tibbers really provide so much, as Atlas has maybe stepped a little bit. Smitty's looking for the three-man Encore. Beautiful lineup from Atlas. They're looking for the burst, but they don't find any kills just yet. Smitty's actually the first one to fall, as Scrans is going to look for the kill onto Sputnik. They're trying to keep this aggression up. It's 1-for-1 now, as Gar is just pushing in the top side, playing aggressively, but there's just no more to be found there. It's just support for support. A beautiful engage from Smitty somehow manages only to be a 1-for-1.
I feel like the reason they didn't get more out of that engage is because Death Lotus wasn't with them. It was simply Atlas and Smitty engaging. And granted, to their credit, they had a very good layer of both their ultimates. That Encore followed by Tibbers was really good. But without the damage provided from your mid laner, from your jungler, it's really hard to get anything of value up, as we do see the flash actually coming out from Death Lotus. It didn't pan to it, but Death Lotus flashed away from that potential Shawarma gank, as we're kind of wet noodling each other in the top lane here.
Yeah, Spada has the dashes in inventory, trying to get aggressive on the guard, but this is how tanky the Hullbreaker can make you with these side lanes. The Test of Spirits comes through, but a nice ultimate from Kale, that Divine Judgment, making sure that the Kale will stay alive. The flash forward from Gara is not going to find anything, and now Chunk is here to support the top laner. Spada just very carefully dodging away from all of these tentacles that are coming through. There won't be a kill coming through the top side, but a lot of important resources burned. I think that flash, especially from Malawi, a really big one, which might unlock a Spada to actually win an engagement in the side lane.
Pretty, we're 24 minutes into this game, and both top laners are 0-0 and 0, haven't participated in anything whatsoever. I actually am kind of curious, is Spada gonna die at all this game? Even at the end of the game, I'm kind of curious. Let's say all 4 members die. Is he just going to sit in base type team dip and then sit in fountain so they can't kill him?
I mean, if this was solo queue, absolutely. You have to retain your deathless game. Even if it doesn't particularly count for the challenge, as your team only has, 1 kill and you didn't participate in it. The KDA looks better if you don't die at all. And you're playing Kale, you're doing your job. I mean, we have to mention, it's 25 minutes in the game. Espada is already level 15. Has been farming up really nicely. Both these top laners, they just sort of had a aggression pact where they said, okay, we're gonna beat each other up, but no one's gonna kill anybody. We're just gonna farm as much as possible. As
that might change.
That change. Gara's in the 2 versus 1, but he has the testing spear. The Stormbreaker's gonna come down. Gara's taking so much damage. The Goredrinker's good, but the flash away from Espada is better. He's gonna find the shutdown, get his first KP of the game, and that's a huge amount of gold going into his pocket. But now Death Lotus looking to get aggressive on the shift. They won't find the damage.
All right, well, I mean,
that 90 caliber net away.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to point out, Espada played that really well. He had a really clutch dodge on that Test of Spirit and managed to really nicely space against Gara there, preventing him from hitting him with the W and the Q, just basically dodged all of his skill shots. So credit where credit is due to Espada there. He played that actually excellent, and he might actually get a plate here, giving them that catch-up gold on this objective.
Yeah, and if you look at that little purple line underneath Espada's mana and health there, you can see level 16 is very close on the horizon. You might even just stay to pick up that last wave just to make sure that he has that level 16 mark, because now Kale, once that happens, is it there? It is there.
He got it.
He's now permanently ascended. This is Kale's true maximum power point. She's 2 items in inventory. She has that level 16 mark. She's got that increased range, the extra attack speed, all of the waves coming out, every auto attack. If you were ever going to play towards your top lane, now is the time. Despite the gold difference, that passive is going to provide a lot of value. So if they can keep Espada alive, provide enough frontline, provide enough support, there's a potential that PFC can start their comeback now.
Yup, and we see Queen's Gambit posturing now, going on to that Baron as we see some engage.
Rams popping the Ghost, looking to get aggressive onto Shift. Gale Force, he's not enough to get him away. Death Lotus gonna go another kill for himself, and Espada has now rotated into the fight. Nitty popping a very large shield on himself, must be going for
that shield is huge. What the hell?
On the Annie. This is the other side of the tech really for Annie, just making sure that your carry, no matter who they are, is fully protected. As we just see Gara just playing Alawi's game perfectly, saying, you know what, I don't need to worry about my team. They're totally fine. Give me your towers. They are all mine.
This reminds me, yesterday I had an Alawi the other day who said, and I quote, "Leave me alone, I'm Alawi," as he built Hullbreaker and just 1v5 the whole game.
It's 4 huge charm from Atlas. Espada is going to pop the Divine Ascension, though, and get himself a kill, but he will drop immediately to Death Lotus, and now that Tristana is able to just free fire in this fight, the Demonic Ascension will not find anything in this fight. It's a double kill for the mid laner of Queen's Gambit. He's going to look for the triple for himself on the Sputnik. He'll pick it up. Tristana is going crazy. It's a legendary 8-0 on this Tristana mid.
Well, I guess we know the Tristana damage did come in clutch, despite the fact that I would say why am I blanking on their name? PFC have a lot more scaling on their team. It's just not enough to contend with Death Lotus's raw amount of damage, as we do see that soul point spawning in 20 seconds for the side of Queen's Gambit as they rush bot lane to go and take it uncontested.
Yeah, I mean, this should pretty much be a uncontested dragon. It's soul point, it's not soul. If you're really playing for your scaling win con, you have another 5 minutes to farm up to get as much gold and XP in your pocket as you can.
We are wrong.
This is really the issue when you pick a fully scaling team composition like PFC has. You have this jungler who can provide a lot of early game pressure, but if you have lanes that can't take advantage of that pressure, or if that jungler doesn't play to what few lanes do, suddenly it's really difficult for you to play in this mid-late game when you've given the enemy team so much value.
Yeah, we can definitely see that PFC, even though their characters are behind, they dare not flank this team. Queen's Gambit just have so much raw damage and crowd control that it's dangerous to even approach them. And you can see this. They're scared to even approach Gara. They're just poking him out, trying. But Gara actually has to flash here. Espada trying to get damage on, I guess.
Yeah, this is the advantage of the level 16 kill. You get that extra auto attack range, and suddenly it's really difficult for Alawi to actually keep you in range for the aggression, as they're going to try and find the aggression onto Chunks. The encore hits. The burst comes through from Atlas. Huge amounts of damage coming through from the Seraphine, and now Shawarma is next. He can't even drop the Stormbreaker. Drops himself. It's a double kill going over as Gara is fighting Espada in the meantime. He's got that Test of Spirit on. He fights the kill through the spirit damage. Goodbye, KO. Goodbye, PFC carry. And I think goodbye, PFC.
Yep, I think that they're just going to close this game out. A beautiful call on the side of Queen's Gambit to drop the dragon and not let off the brake for 1 second, keeping the pressure all game, all series. Beautiful series coming in from Queen's Gambit, showing that they can contend for that middle of the pack, that they can contend for playoffs, and that they want these wins.
Yeah, that is a very fast 2-0 series from Queen's Gambit. It really nicely played for them. I think despite what we were talking about a lot with the like potential drafting mistakes and potential like macro mistakes from PFC, it was a very well played game from Queen's Gambit. They knew exactly what they wanted to do coming into game 1, coming into game 2. They played their game plan as about as well as you could expect any team to, and I don't think you could ask for anything better from them showing.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to take a quick note of just how well this mid jungle played this series. We mentioned it before the game, but I think it's definitely worth putting Scrams in top contention for the junglers in AGL. He has shown that you don't need to be a carry in order to be impactful. Playing things like Tarek, Ivern, all of these weak side junglers and still being ridiculously impactful is definitely something you cannot underestimate when it comes to competitive play, not just in gold, but in general, knowing that you might not be the main primary carry for this team and that you might have to take a backseat on the damage, on the picks, on the carry, on the glory, on everything. And Scrams does a beautiful job this series of showing all of that in just 2 games.
Yeah, I think Queen's Gambit came into this series with a plan, executed on it, again, about as well as you would expect any team to. And I think that's going to be it for us today. We are going to be handing it off to the first channel as they are playing in their series. As I heard from the casters, they are about 24 minutes into their game 2. Team Ambition is up 1-0 right now over DMG Des Moines. So we're going to hop over to them in a raid pretty much as quick as we can, as there's not much else left to talk about in this series. Do you have any final notes for us, Quacks?
Nope, just a really good series all around and through. Queen's Gambit showing that they're a really good team, and I'm excited to see more of them, hopefully in playoffs and when they make it.
Absolutely. We will be handing it off to our producer, PVS. Again, thank you for stepping in. And we will be heading over to the first channel to watch the rest of the game of Team Ambition versus Des Moines. So don't go anywhere. Stick around. We're going to keep watching more League of Legends.
Stuck in the same